Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this ReadyGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing and analysing tech news, which as usual, has popped up in the past 24 or so hours. With any luck, you're having an amazing day. This is actually the second video for today. This is twice in a row this has happened. Just because there is so much news, I decided to cram a separate video in rather than trying to fit it all into one video, because quite frankly there is so much PlayStation 5 stuff that I didn't want a single video which was going to be like 30 odd minutes. So this video is going to focus on a couple of leaks that have occurred for the PlayStation 5 and also a little bit of information I have regarding the APU, which I want to get into first. So regarding the APU, I recently said that the leaker on a Taiwanese forum, his name is Aquarius, has said that there was a roughly 15% difference in the size between the Arden APU, the Xbox APU, excuse me, and the PlayStation 5 APU. However, I actually have a slight correction for that, because the Xbox APU is allegedly 350 mm squared. Apparently those were old estimates. Instead, we are looking at 319 mm squared for the PlayStation 5 APU, and the Xbox APU is allegedly 363 mm squared. I don't know if the person who told me this information via DM wants me to reveal who it is. It was someone on Twitter, so I'm not going to say who it is, and at the moment they are probably sleeping, so I can't ask them, but thank you very much to that person for that correction. Now, regarding the PlayStation 5, there have also been a couple of developments for the system. One very interesting thing was that on the recent news that Sony would have a presence at CES, someone asked, well, does that confirm that the PlayStation 5 will be revealed, or we will learn some details of the PlayStation 5? And very interestingly, Corey Balrog liked this tweet, and he is of course well known for his part in God of War, although what capacity Corey will appear in at CES and also what we will learn about the PlayStation 5 is ambiguous at best. Personally, I think if Sony choose to reveal any details of the PlayStation 5, it will be maybe the odd gameplay demo. Potentially, they might reveal some renders of the case, maybe, or maybe we may see the case or something like that. I don't think we're going to get like a full breakdown of the specifications and performance targets. They may speak in kind of like wishy-washy language and say something like, we will have a super fast SSD in the latest AMD Zen CPU or something like that. Basically very PR speak. But I don't think they're going to be like, these are the amount of T-flops, this is the amount of pixels on screen, and these are the games it's going to launch with at this price point. So I think we're still going to have to wait for a while on that. I expect that the hype is going to continue to build, most likely until at least E3. I think that Sony and Microsoft are both playing cat and mouse right now. Oh, and there is also some questions that I got regarding yesterday's leak, which of course was from Pastebin. Now, one thing that some people are getting confused on is that the specifications, which were 40 compute units at 2060 MHz, some people are asking, well, is that the specifications of the PlayStation 5 or is it the 36 compute units? I actually had a couple of DMs about that and also a couple of emails. I believe, although I could be wrong, that those specifications are for the development kit. In the end, it could make its way down to the retail console, but I think that 40 compute units at over 2000 MHz, given the noise levels that are reported for the development kit, is unlikely, but who the heck knows. So yeah, I just want to be very clear about that. There's a very fascinating rumour as well floating around that Sony are working on a, quote, revolutionary tool, end quote, that will allow the PlayStation 5 to emulate all PlayStation consoles, not just the PlayStation 4. Sony have confirmed backwards compatibility with the PlayStation 4, and from what we understand, with patents as well as a couple of leaks, the PlayStation 5 does this by essentially having different compatibility modes in the hardware. So, for example, the GPU will downclock from 2 GHz down to 800 or 911 MHz, depending on whether it's emulating the PS4 or PS4 Pro, and will shut down additional compute units, disable SMT on the CPU, and so on and so on and so on. It's a pretty ingenious way for Sony to handle this, although honestly Microsoft have done similar for the next generation Xbox, and Microsoft have really nailed it with backwards compatibility with the Xbox One X as well. The fact that you can play games at higher resolutions, and Microsoft have done a fantastic job there. And of course they're extending that to the Xbox Series X, where you can play every generation of Xbox game on your console, which is amazing, not just in terms of usability, but also for PR. And Sony, of course, have a legacy of several PlayStation generations now, and according to Hip Hop Gamer, the PlayStation 5 will be able to run every single game all the way back to the original PlayStation. Honestly, I don't know how reliable his sources are, so I'm not going to say that this is true or this is false. I can say for one, I really want this to be true. I think it would be amazing if it was. I would also love it if you were able to put in, let's say, a PlayStation 1 game, let's say Tekken 3 or what have you, and if you live in a PAL region, please, for the love of all that is sane and just in the world, do not run the game in PAL mode, please. The borders and 17.5% slower is just hell, to be totally honest, and this of course was also true in the PlayStation 2 era. Quite honestly, I don't see a reason that they can't do it. The PlayStation 1 is not exactly difficult to run on any even remotely modern piece of hardware. You can do a search for this yourself if you didn't know, but there are several PS1 emulators that will now run on what is basically a turnip, and PlayStation 2 is not very difficult to run either, and there is some really good software emulation out there. Some games are a bit sketchy, and some games have some visual problems, but in general, PlayStation 1 emulation is almost flawless, so it would be nice if it would run, even if it was only on software, natively on the PlayStation 5. I'd also love to see what would happen with PlayStation 3 games. We've seen that there are PlayStation 3 emulators out there for the PC. Admittedly, they do require a bit more than a turnip to run, but some games look visually stunning, particularly if you start running them with, let's say, sweet effects or something like that. But yeah, I'm really hoping that this is true. But also, according to this information, the PlayStation 5 is not going to be revealed at CES. Instead, an official reveal is going to wait until February. So it's going to be interesting to see what actually really happens and what Sony decide to launch. And also there was a couple of very interesting patents recently concerning the controller, and this does also tie in to the paste bin information. So a couple of people are suspicious of the paste bin leak because of the LCD screen, and actually we have seen some patents from Sony regarding an LCD screen, although of course the company have not come out and explicitly stated, yes, there's going to be a LCD screen on there which gives, you know, it shows a picture of the character's butt as you're running or something like that. Instead it's, you know, just patents, and at the end of the day they could not make their way into a retail console. And as always with something like a paste bin leak, it's potentially possible that someone could have found patents or whatever and then kind of given their best guesses and then thrown a whole bunch of stuff onto paste bin. That's always possible. Although what's very interesting is there have been another patent that's been discovered for the PlayStation 5 controller. And it looks like there are triggers on the back of the controller. From what I can also see, it looks like there's some type of touchpad on there as well. Although what this actually does, it's still unclear, to put it mildly. Furthermore, it looks like the controller does not have a back button, which would be a very interesting decision by Sony. It also looks like a USB port has replaced the headphone jack. I'm sure you'll agree that none of these changes exactly make the design of the DualShock 5 alien. It's not like how Nintendo have approached some of their pads, for example the SNES to, let's say, the N64. Instead it's more of a refinement upon refinement upon refinement. But what's going to be really interesting to me is exactly what the functionality of those rear buttons are. Are they mirrors of other buttons on the controller? So for example, those are alternatives to, let's say, L2 R2 or L1 R1. Or instead are they their own independent buttons which can be used for completely different actions in games? It's going to be really interesting to see how all of this comes together. Sony themselves have referred to haptic feedback, which we've heard quite a bit about recently, but it's going to be fascinating to see exactly what this controller feels like and what developers do with this additional functionality in games itself. Personally speaking, I'm really looking forward to the next generation, and I think it's going to be really cool to see what both companies end up achieving. I'm also, and this is more geeky aspiration, but I really want to see some tech demos. And I don't necessarily just mean games that developers are working on, but just some demos of what we can expect for the next generation. In other words, what's different? We know the graphics are going to be shinier, and we almost certainly know that ray tracing is going to be in some of the big titles for, let's say, the Xbox. But what differences are there? Like, what will be the difference of running around in the latest Gears of War or God of War or Halo or whatever on the next generation platform versus this one, other than more pixels on screen? What differences are we going to see in terms of AI, in terms of physics and all of this other stuff, which to me, I think is just as fundamental and as, to be honest, as exciting of saying, well, look, we've got shinier pixels on screen. With all of that said though, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you did, then I'd encourage you to also check out the other one that I've uploaded today, although that one's more PC focused, where I discuss the next generation of AMD GPUs and also NVIDIA GPUs. But still, thanks very much for supporting the channel and watching the video. If you can leave a like, that would be appreciated, and of course, share it with your friends if you would as well. With that said, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.